Story 1. The Farmer and the Clown. As a teenager, I used to love Halloween, but the Halloween of 2001 was my last. What happened to my brother and me terrified us so badly that we would never celebrate the holiday ever again. It's the most horrific experience either of us have ever been through in our lives. My friends and I had planned to visit a haunted house. To get to my friend Seth's place, we would often cut through the woods and then a field, which was a quicker route compared to the longer winding road. This field was owned by a cranky farmer who detested our trespassing. On more than one occasion he had yelled at us, "It'd be a shame if you boys disappeared in those woods." The woods were an eerie place that we rarely took at night. Despite our past experiences, though, the thrill of Halloween and the convenience of a shortcut made it appealing. My little brother and I said our goodbyes to our parents and made our way out the door. Just as we had done so many times, we trekked down the path on our way to our friend's house. It was a full moon that night, making it bright enough for us to see our way, but causing us to be foolish enough not to take along flashlights. As expected, the woods were dark and creepy. Our only company was the typical sounds of the woods at night and our footsteps down the dirt trail. My brother and I walked along, not saying much, just trying to get to the end of the trail and into the field as quickly as possible. Everything was going as planned until we were about halfway into the hike. At first, I thought I saw some movement near a large tree to the right, off the path and into the woods a bit. I grabbed my brother's shoulder and we stopped walking. "What is it?" my brother asked. "Hold on," I said, my eyes locked onto the tree. I stared at it for a moment, searching for any movement, but I didn't see any. "Guess it was nothing," I said to my brother. "Come on, let's hurry up and get on the other side of this trail." As we made our way down the trail a little bit further, something came over me. It was just like an overwhelming feeling of dread. Something wasn't right. I don't recall ever hearing anything like footsteps or branches breaking or anything, but something just came over me and told me to turn around. When I did, the sight that met my eyes literally made my blood freeze. There was a figure, dressed as a clown, standing on the part of the trail we had just passed. It stood there, completely silent, just staring at us. The clown's silent stillness, combined with the muted glow from the moonlight, gave it the most nightmarish quality I had ever seen in my life. My brother began trembling. We stood there, our eyes locked onto the clown's, not saying anything. The woods seemed to go completely quiet. Not knowing what else to do, I called out, trying to defuse the situation. "Hey man, nice clown outfit." Silence was the only reply. The figure remained motionless. Taking a braver tone, I taunted, "Hey, the circus is the other way." My brother's grip tightened on my arm and his voice trembled as he said, "Let's just go. This isn't right." But before we could make another move, the clown began to slowly step towards us. When it did, I noticed something. This clown wasn't wearing those big floppy red shoes that people see on most clowns. It was wearing boots. Brown, lace-up boots. My attention to the boots was short-lived, though. The dread I felt earlier intensified. My heart was hammering in my chest, and every hair on my body stood on end. "Hey, we're just trying to get to our friend's place," I stuttered, trying to reason with the figure. But again, there was no response. The clown just kept coming closer and closer. Then, it did something that will forever be burned in my mind. With its right hand, eyes still locked onto us, it reached around behind it and slowly pulled out a knife. Not just any knife, it was a massive knife. I'm guessing it had at least a 10-inch blade on it. My brother, trembling even more now than before, could barely even muster out a whisper. "We need to run." Without even giving him a response, I pushed him forward towards the field, and we both began to run. We were both terrified, and my brother started screaming. "Run! Just run!" I was yelling out to him. As we began to run, the clown gave chase, and it was gaining ground quickly. I could hear the thud of its boots inching closer and closer. In a split second, I made a decision. "Run as fast as you can to Seth's house and don't stop. Don't look behind you," I said to my brother. He didn't say anything. He just kept running down the trail. As he did, I darted off to the left into the woods and started screaming, "I'm over here! I'm over here!" I remember feeling so helpless. If what I had just done worked, then my brother would be safe. If it didn't, I was too far away now, and there was nothing that I could do to save him. Luckily for my brother, it worked. The clown slowed a bit and hesitated, as if deciding which one of us to come after. It seemed as if the clown made a split-second decision too, and veered off to the left, coming after me. I was both relieved and terrified because I knew my brother was safe, but now I was in horrible danger. As I sprinted through the woods, I heard a thud and shot a glance behind me. I looked back and saw the clown on the ground. It appeared that it had tripped while trying to leap over a log. I seized this chance and veered right, finding a large tree to hide behind. The clown approached, searching the surroundings, knife still in hand. Every second felt like an hour as it sought me out. Tears began welling up in my eyes, and I struggled to control my breathing, trying not to give away my position. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the clown exhale a large breath, as if frustrated that it had lost me. Then footsteps as it began quickly retreating back towards the trail. I didn't know what to do. If I moved, it might be waiting on me and come back after me. If I stayed, it might circle back around and find me. Frozen with fear and unsure of my next move, I sat hidden and sobbed softly. Time seemed to stand still. Every minute felt like an eternity. 10 minutes went by, then 15, then 20. But finally, after about 45 minutes, the distant sound of people yelling reached my ears. Flashlights cut through the darkness, and familiar voices called out my name. Gathering every ounce of courage I had, I emerged from my hiding spot and raced towards them as fast as I could. It was my brother, accompanied by a few of our friends. The relief was overwhelming. Together we made our way back to Seth's house, where I relayed the terrifying ordeal. To my disappointment, Seth's parents brushed it off, thinking it was just a Halloween prank. My own parents had a similar reaction when I called them. Part of me was certain it was the farmer, trying to scare us off his land once and for all. Those brown lace-up boots kept coming back to me. It had to be the farmer, right? Who else could it have been? And that knife, it was the real thing. I know it was. One thing was certain, though. If it was the farmer, and it was his intent to keep us out of those woods and off of his land for good, it worked. My brother and I never ventured through those woods or across that farmer's field ever again. Story 2. The Slaughterhouse. In the autumn of 2014, with the anticipation of Halloween hanging in the air, I found myself working at a haunted house. At 18, I was eager for any opportunity to make some money, and this seemed like a fun, temporary gig that would pad my pockets a bit. The venue was an old slaughterhouse, which had once seen countless animals meet their fate. It laid silent and forgotten for a time until it was purchased and repurposed for various events. Every October, it transformed into a house of horrors. I spent the first 2 weeks as part of the decoration team, setting the ambiance with cobwebs, eerie lighting, and the typical haunted house frills. Everything went relatively smooth until the second day, when we stumbled upon a room that stopped us dead in our tracks. The walls and floor of this room were covered in unsettling drawings. Symbols and signs that seemed ritualistic sprawled everywhere. Among the markings were remnants of what looked like candle wax and other paraphernalia, suggesting that someone, or some group, had been conducting some occult practices there. Unlike the other artificially spooky rooms we had set up, this one had an aura of genuine dread about it. Even in the broad daylight, with a group of us together, it felt as though we were intruding upon something we shouldn't be. It felt like we were being watched in that room. Stories quickly spread among the crew, sounds that seemed to come from nowhere, objects moving inexplicably, and shadows that would catch the corner of your eye just before disappearing into nothing. It was difficult to discern whether the rumors were playful jests, conjured to set the atmosphere and get a rise out of the crew, or if there was really something to them. Could something deep and sinister really be going on in that room? Regrettably, I'd soon find out firsthand. The stage was set, and a few weeks out from Halloween, we began receiving guests. Rotating positions meant each of us had to play our roles in different rooms, and I had the grave misfortune of being stationed in that eerie room 3 times. With each shift, the sense of dread only intensified. The artificial fog, the haunting soundtrack we played, and the dim lighting only added to the unsettling feeling in that room. At times, in the darkness, I'd think I saw movements, but I brushed it off as tricks my mind played on me in the haunted setting. But Halloween night, the grand finale of our haunted venture, was when the real horror struck. I was assigned to the room again. I remember dreading it and not wanting to go in there, but I also remember telling myself to just get it done and get it over with. As the evening wore on and more visitors passed through, the room seemed to grow heavier and more ominous. During one of the brief lulls between groups, I felt a chill run down my spine. I felt like I was being watched. I used my phone's light to get a better look in the room. What I saw absolutely terrified me. In the corner is what I could only describe as a black mass. It just hovered in the corner of the room, formless, yet it felt like it was alive, and it felt like it was watching me. Shivers ran straight through me as I heard the final group coming through. Not knowing what else to do, I switched off my light and told myself that I didn't see what I just saw. As the next group entered, their excited and nervous chatter was a stark contrast to the heart-stopping fear that I felt. As the lights went out and they entered, I swear I felt a breath-like sensation against my ear, and the feeling of someone, or something, brushing up against my arm. I screamed out loud. The crowd, not realizing my true distress, screamed as well, and then began to laugh. I was in an absolute panic. Every hair on my body was standing straight up. I didn't know what else to do, so I just stood there, completely frozen. I remember panting, trying to control my breathing but unable to do so. The more I panicked, the more the group took it as part of the show. I waited, my eyes wide and darting back and forth to see if I could catch a glimpse of anything, but all I could see was darkness. I tried to stay composed for the visitors, but every ounce of me wanted to run. The seconds dragged by as the group made jokes, laughed and screamed, not realizing that there was true terror going on in that room. As soon as the group finally exited, I made my exit as well. I left the building immediately and went straight home. And that was the last night I ever set foot in that converted slaughterhouse. The pay wasn't nearly enough to justify the horrors I had experienced. I've since heard rumors that the place is genuinely haunted, with many speculating that the ritualistic remnants we found had awakened something. Whatever the case may be, I want nothing to do with it, and will never ever go back to those grounds again. Story 3. The Abandoned Asylum. I never considered myself an adrenaline junkie or a thrill seeker, but there I was, a young 20-year-old, standing on the grounds of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia. It was Halloween night, and a few of my friends wanted to do something different. This massive Gothic-style structure had been constructed in the mid-1800s, intended to be a haven for the mentally ill, a place of solace. But with time, the narrative changed. Overcrowding led to inhumane conditions, dark treatments methods were employed, and the place became a ground zero for suffering until it was finally closed. The building had been left to wither, and stories about the agonies once hosted there turned it into a sort of local legend. It was the kind of place that dared to be explored, and we fell for it. I remember that night clearly. We went in, half-cocked, with just a couple of flashlights. Our guts were inflated by a mix of cockiness and sheer curiosity. Its windows, like hollow eyes, watched us as we trespassed onto the grounds. Inside, the air was thick, like it was holding onto years of stories and regrets. It was easy to joke at first, to laugh off the heaviness in the air. But as we probed deeper into the labyrinth of rooms and hallways, our laughter died away. The layout made no sense. Corridors twisted into unusual angles. Rooms led into more rooms, and doors sometimes opened into sheer drops to the floors below, as if the building itself was disoriented. We knew about the overcrowding, the patients crammed into spaces unfit for humans, and walking through, we could almost hear the echo of their struggles. The deeper we went, the more we felt the weight of the place. Graffiti was everywhere, leaving behind both art and warnings. "Leave," one word implored, spray-painted near a stairwell that descended into darkness. As the night wore on, we all became more and more jittery. The laughs dried up, and so did our enthusiasm for the adventure. Not long into our journey of this decrepit place, we had already decided that we'd had enough. But just as we were about to leave, we heard footsteps. The sound was unmistakable, the slow drag of feet somewhere in the depths of the asylum. I don't know why we followed the sound. I guess sometimes curiosity can override survival instincts. But we did so, and eventually ended up in what looked like what had once been a communal area. It was there that we saw a figure. It was a man in the shadows. He was real, not some apparition, and that reality struck deep fear into my heart. He was dragging something, and the sound of metal scraping against the floor was like a blade through the eerie silence. We flipped on our flashlights, trying to get a better look. As we did, he turned slowly, and his eyes caught the light of our beams. I've never seen that kind of emptiness in someone's eyes, a kind of desperate hopelessness. He wasn't some relic of the past. He was very much in the present, and that realization jolted us to the core. His eyes squinted with scorn, and his lips curled up, exposing his rotting teeth. Panic took over then. We ran. The exit was nowhere in sight, and it felt like we were running through a never-ending nightmare. When we finally burst through the entrance, into the night air, we didn't stop running until the distant lights of the town were visible. We parted ways with minimal exchanges and never spoke of it again. But the experience, the history of the place, and the man with the hollow eyes stayed with me. It was a stark reminder of the thin line that separates the past from the present, the living from the haunted spaces they inhabit, and the forgotten individuals who slip between those cracks.